What's up, NFL fans? Welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Round. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Coach Kevin Smith. Coach, what's going on?
What's up, Jeff? Heading down the home stretch, as they say, man. Got a pretty epic Week 18 in store for us.
It was going to be dull, and we're going to talk about this, the conspiracy theory that abounds with the NFL and how they want to shape Week 18. But I think you have to go back to Week 17 and how those games finishes, and those three matchups that really are they are really catapulting Week 18 into what you said, a crazy finish. Let's talk about that first and foremost. Let's talk about the games that will decide divisions. So we have the NFC South, the Carolina Panthers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then we have the NFC West, San Francisco and Seattle, and then Baltimore and Pittsburgh for the AFC North. Which one of those three, let's start there, which one of those three intrigues you the most?
I think if you're just looking at the best game, the best matchup overall, it's San Francisco, Seattle. I mean, those two teams have been excellent for most of the season. Seattle, a little bit of a surprise. They kind of snuck up on some people this year. And in a way, I mean, I guess San Francisco is too. I think people forgot about the 49ers. You know, they were consistently one of the best teams in the NFL for a good 5-year stretch or so, and then fell off last year. And have very quietly come back and are now 12-4, have an opportunity to not just win the West, but be the number one seed out of the NFC if they can win next week. So that's fascinating to me. The other two games, I mean, it's mediocre teams. Somebody has to win that division, either one of those divisions. If Tampa wins the NFC South, they'll do so with a losing record. They'll be 8-9. Yeah. If Baltimore wins the AFC North, they'll be 9-8. So, you know, those are good matchups for the fans, but not quite as sexy nationally.
Now, those three games, Panthers, Buccaneers, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Saturday. Seahawks at 49ers, 8 p.m. Eastern Saturday night. Steelers, Ravens, of course, Sunday Night Football, 8:20 p.m., and that is in Pittsburgh. Now, again, game is in Tampa Bay. Game is in Santa Clara, where the Super Bowl will be this year, and then the game is in Pittsburgh. How much stock in these games do you put into home field advantage?
Almost none, honestly. Because
none?
I mean, very little. I'll say
okay.
Very little.
All right.
These teams are so familiar with each other. And I mean, maybe you get a little bit of home field advantage from the crowd noise and things like that. But Seattle, San Francisco, I mean, you know, these are franchises that have been traditional rivals for a long time. I don't know if that's the most rabid fan base in San Francisco. You know, I mean, They got good fans, no doubt about it. But I think maybe if it was in Seattle, where that crowd is notoriously one of the loudest in the NFL, maybe that would be a little more of an advantage. I don't think the Steelers gain any advantage over the Ravens. Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh have coached against one another, maybe the most of any two coaches in NFL history. I don't know if that's a fact. George Hallis and Curly Lambeau might be number one. But I mean, they know each other inside out. And there's a little novelty there with Tampa and Carolina, I guess. But I would maybe a little bit of stock in it, but not too much.
I will say this, and obviously we are Steeler fans. We cover the team. Since 2020, do you know how many games the Ravens have won in Pittsburgh?
I do not.
One. Just one. They're 1-4 in that time span. So the Steelers typically do play the Ravens very well at home. That doesn't guarantee a win. I was curious about that. But let's preview these games individually, and let's start in chronological order. Panthers at Buccaneers. Currently, Tampa Bay is giving 2.5. I don't know. The Buccaneers are not playing great football, Coach. And it's really tough because the Panthers have been, and this is crazy to say, I feel like they've been the more consistent team the last half of the season. What are your thoughts on this game?
They have. Tampa's lost 6 out of 7, and they've lost, and they look bad doing it. There's some infighting going on there. The head coach kind of threw the whole team under the bus 2 weeks ago when he questioned their effort, and he said it's got to mean something to them. I mean, if you had to say that one of those two teams has some momentum going in, it's definitely Carolina. The key is, can Carolina run the football? I mean, they've got a pretty good rushing attack with Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. And when they run the ball well, they tend to do well. So And that was their key to victory a couple weeks ago when they beat Tampa in Carolina. So if it goes that way, if Carolina's running the ball, controlling clock, keeping it a relatively low scoring game, then that certainly favors the Panthers. But if they have to put this game on Bryce Young's shoulders and they get into a shootout with the Buccaneers, then I think it favors Tampa.
I want to ask you about Baker Mayfield. I know he's banged up. He has that shoulder injury, which is that's probably going to exist until the offseason when he can actually just let it rest. He was an MVP candidate after the first, I don't know, third of the season. Not the same. Is it all the injury? What are you seeing from Baker Mayfield?
It's a lot of the injury, no doubt about that. You can tell because his completion percentage has really fallen. And a lot of times that's a telltale sign that a guy's not healthy, because they're just mechanically they're compensating for an injury in some fashion. So his completion percentage has really fallen. I mean, his interceptions aren't terrible. He's only got 10 for the season, but he's thrown more in recent weeks. So I think that there's a little bit of regression on his part due to the injuries. But really, that just feels like a team right now that for whatever reason has sort of lost its mojo. I mean, we talk about momentum a lot, and I believe it's a real thing. And when a team is playing well, everything just sort of seems to take care of itself. And when they're not, all those things that seem simple become very, very difficult. So right now, Tampa's struggling to do anything consistently.
All right. What's your prediction? How do you see this one going?
I'm going to go with the Panthers, man.
Oh, my God.
My son, right. Jake, man. All right, Jake, I got your back, buddy. Panthers going to get into the playoffs. Aiden didn't get the Lions, but we'll get Jake in with the Panthers.
I'm going to go Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay finds a way to win. They're just too talented to be this bad. You got to think they'll put it together. But, okay, let's go to the second game. Again, 8 p.m. kickoff Eastern time. Seahawks at 49ers. What are your thoughts on this one? Again, Seattle's giving 1.5 on the road here. So the San Francisco 49ers as home dogs is pretty crazy. What are your thoughts?
Classic matchup. You got a phenomenal offense. Shanahan's offense, which just put up 42 points in an unbelievable Monday night game or Sunday night game against Chicago, against Mike McDonald's defense, one of the best defenses in the NFL, one of the best defensive-minded head coaches in the NFL. I love the idea of, the old styles make fights argument. And now, you're going to get these two teams together. When they played earlier this season, it was a defensive struggle. It was a slugfest. And I think this is the kind of game that it's going to be. I think it'll be a lower scoring game, and lower scoring for these teams probably means low 20s. I love the matchup right here.
I think the last time they played was week 1, was it not?
Yeah, way back in the beginning of the year.
They bookended the season with these 2 divisional games, and man, they're going to get a good one. Seattle is tough. Like, you have these weeks where, you think about the game against Phillip Rivers and Indianapolis, it was 6 field goals that won the game for them. And then they have some offensive performances that make, man, this is going to be a very, very good game. Very good game. Who do you have in this one, though, in the NFC West?
So, Seattle won in week 1, 17-13.
Okay.
I think San Francisco is better now than they were then. I just kind of feel like the 49ers are just right now a team that figures out how to get things done. They're just going to find a way to get it done in another tight, probably 21-17 type game. I just think that the Niners have some good mojo right now.
I'm going to go with Seattle. We're differing on every one of these picks, which is fine. I just think the Seahawks have they've weathered that storm. And 49ers, there's just something about this team, whether it's the injuries, and George Kittle's now banged up. They already lost Fred Warner. They lost Bosa. I just feel like, they're doing this in such a strange way, and you don't expect them to win. Christian McCaffrey is still Christian McCaffrey. They don't have a lot of the weapons that you're used to seeing. There's no Deebo Samuel. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is MIA. I don't know. I feel like eventually it's going to come back and bite them. I'm going to take Seattle in this one. Let's go to Sunday night. The Ravens at Steelers. Will it be Lamar Jackson? Will it be Tyler Huntley? No one knows. Will TJ Watt play for the Steelers? I don't know, Coach. This is still fresh for us after the loss in Cleveland. What's your takeaway on this AFC North matchup?
Well, Steelers fans, I hate to be the bearer of, I won't say bad news. I'll say bad forecasts, but I feel like Pittsburgh had their window. They had everything set up for them. Baltimore had to go to Green Bay and win. To their credit, they did so. And they did so in the worst possible fashion if you're a Steelers fan, by just running the ball down Green Bay's throat with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. The Packers knew Baltimore were going to come out and run the football, and they did it anyway. They rushed for over 300 yards. And we've seen that happen before. Just rewind a year ago, Ravens Steelers wild card playoff last year. Baltimore runs for 299 yards. Pittsburgh had it teed up for them. Granted, they had all sorts of problems with suspensions and injuries and players being out. But if you can't win against Cleveland, even if it's on the road, even if it's in a place where you've struggled to win, with an opportunity to lock up your division, that doesn't bode well for you. Pittsburgh's going to have to figure out how to rally because that was such a deflating loss. It just feels like Baltimore's got the momentum right now.
I'll tell you what is going to be really interesting to me, and I want to run this by you, see if it's just me with a fan take or whether there's actually some credence to this. I hope that Lamar Jackson plays. And the reason being is that I think if you have Tyler Huntley as the quarterback, you're going to see an offense that looks just like the one we saw on Saturday night in Green Bay. They're not going to put a ton on his shoulders. Give the ball to Derrick Henry and run it down their throat until they show they can stop it. When Lamar Jackson is in the game, the Ravens have been more likely to get away from the run. That's where you see these stints where, oh my gosh, Derrick Henry's only touched the ball 3 times in the second half. That happens when Lamar is playing, not when he's not. What do you think about that?
I agree with you. I think that's a good take. I'm a little conflicted because we know that when Lamar Jackson's on his game, he's excellent. But we also know that the Steelers do a better job of containing and frustrating Lamar Jackson than any team in the NFL. And yes, when Jackson's there is, I don't want to say an identity crisis in Baltimore, but maybe there's a little bit of a lack of focus on Derrick Henry. And when Derrick Henry is right, that Baltimore offense is at its best.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the defense of Baltimore and this matchup in and of itself. The Ravens defense is not your typical Ravens defense. Their secondary is, we'll say, mediocre. They don't get after the quarterback like you're used to seeing. Do the Steelers have an advantage at any point of this game?
I would say yes, and it's a big if, they had all of their weapons on offense, but DK Metcalf is suspended.
Yep.
I don't know what Calvin Austin's status is, but he missed the game last week. Darnell Washington's going to miss the game this week with a broken arm. It just feels like Pittsburgh is incredibly limited at the receiver position. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, when Pittsburgh played Baltimore a few weeks back, had one of his best passing games of the season. The Steelers threw the ball very well. Who are they throwing the football to? Is it going to be Adam Thielen, who's been on the team for about a month? Is it going to be Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's been on the team for about a month? Is it going to be a bunch of guys? I mean, they got a bunch of guys with single-digit receptions that are going to be on the field. Scotty Miller being another one of them. Roman Wilson being another one of them. If he even sees the field, who are they throwing the football to? So unless Pittsburgh can really run the ball well, they're going to struggle to score points.
All right, so the Steelers are actually getting 3.5 points at home, so they're home dogs as well. What do you think? You're taking the Ravens?
I can't in good conscience take the Ravens, even if in my heart of heart I believe the Ravens are going to win. I'm taking the Steelers because I'm not a traitor.
Exactly. You're not a traitor. You do what's right. You take the Steelers as home dogs, especially the Steelers. If I'm a betting man, I'm taking the Steelers getting points at home. These games are always close. I have a feeling this one's going to be close as well. It might come down to which team does or doesn't turn the ball over. And so we'll see. It's going to be fascinating to watch. All right, we've broken down those games. Let's go to our next topic. Let's talk some superlatives, Coach. League MVP heading into Week 18. Who is that for you?
So if you look nationally right now, there's the conversation seems to be about Matthew Stafford versus Drake May. If I'm a voter and if those are the two guys, because realistically, those are the two guys who have consistently been at the forefront of this conversation, it's probably a toss-up. And if it's a toss-up, I'm voting for Matthew Stafford. I'm voting for the Lifetime Achievement Award, right? This is a guy who has been stellar throughout his career. His numbers are absurd. He's got 40 touchdowns and 5 interceptions this year. And that Rams offense has been as good as any offense in the NFL. And it really feels as though if Matthew Stafford, like Matthew Stafford is an MVP quality player, and this is his year to win it.
I can't remember a time, and maybe you can, where it feels like the list of candidates would be so short.
Yeah.
I mean, you say Stafford and May. We brought up how earlier in the year, like Jared Goff was a discussion at one point, Baker Mayfield. They've all fallen off. They're not even in the category. They're not even in the discussion. If you said, Jeff, who's a third? I can't think of one. Last year, you had Saquon Barkley. You had Derrick Henry. You had a slew of quarterbacks that could be, obviously, Josh Allen wins it. He would have been there. Lamar Jackson would have been there. Who would be a third, coach? Like, that's just a basic question. Who would be a third option?
It's a great question. Is Myles Garrett worthy in the conversation?
No,
you saw on Sunday in the Steelers-Browns game a reason as to why a non-quarterback doesn't win this award anymore, because the Steelers were 100% determined to take Myles Garrett out of that game, and they did so. Yeah. They may have done so to their own detriment in some ways, but if you want to minimize the contributions of a defensive end or a wide receiver, you just double them. If you want to minimize the contributions of a running back, you load the box. The only position where it's really difficult to cover all of the bases needed to cover to take that guy away is quarterback. So it's got to be a quarterback. I don't know. Is it Caleb Williams? He's having a hell of a year. 25 touchdowns and 6 interceptions for the shockingly good Bears. Is it Allen? He's always in that conversation. Is it Sam Darnold? If it wasn't for his 14 interceptions and that real clunker when he threw 4 picks a couple weeks ago, he might be in the conversation because he's fourth in the NFL in quarterback rating. But you're right. All of these guys that were in the conversation early in the season have fallen off, and only May and Stafford have remained consistent.
I would take Caleb Williams as a candidate over Drake May. When you look at who the Patriots beat, it's not even close to who Caleb Williams has beat in the NFC North. So interesting discussion. We'll see how it finishes out here in week 18. But what about coach of the year? Who would be your coach of the year going into the final week of the regular season?
Well, you mentioned everything that San Francisco has overcome.
Yeah.
The injuries, and we're not talking about fringe players. We're talking about, again, Warner and Bosa and Ayuk being out for all that time. And Brock Purdy was out for several weeks. And when Brock Purdy was out, Mac freaking Jones came in and they didn't skip a beat. Like Kyle Shanahan's done an incredible job. If they win that game on Saturday night and claim the number 1 overall seed in the NFC, I don't know how he's not the coach of the year. I think they have done an amazing job of overcoming adversity.
I was going to go with 2 first-year head coaches as possible candidates. Liam Cohen down in Jacksonville. I mean, this guy came into what was a train wreck in Jacksonville, and he has definitely righted the ship. They look like a viable threat in the AFC. And Ben Johnson, you mentioned what Chicago's done.
Yep.
How do you not give him some credence? And I'm not saying you didn't, but in this regard, I think there's a lot of candidates here. And I would even say Sean McVay is another coach who could be. And I like how McVay has kind of switched and he's kind of embraced running the ball. It's not all throwing. Coach, there are some really, in terms of the MVP, how there's not a lot of candidates, I feel like coaching, there's a lot. You agree or disagree?
Oh, 100%. What about Vrabel up in New England? What about Mike McDonald in Seattle? What about D'Amico Ryans? I mean, Houston comes off the canvas, man. Houston is dead and buried early in the season. What do they start? 0-3 and 1-4? And here they are, the hottest team in the NFL right now. So, yeah, that will be a really interesting vote on the coach of the year.
And D'Amico Ryans, a lot of those wins didn't come with CJ Stroud, a quarterback. It was what Davis
Mills. Yeah. Yeah.
My gosh. All right. So that's interesting. We'll take a look at that. All right. Let's go to the third one. The Vegas tank job. Should the NFL consider a lottery format? And it's like the NBA has other, I think there might be some others, but the NBA is the most popular lottery. Vegas sitting down their best player, Max Crosby, and putting him on IR. He definitely didn't want to go on IR. I don't know, Coach, what's your thoughts on the NFL tanking?
Well, first, before we even get to that, the NFL's got to be looking into what Vegas did this past week when they put not just Max Crosby, but Brock Bowers, their best offensive player, Jeremy Chin, a very good defensive player. They put all three of them on injured reserve. Not a single one of them had an injury designation after the Week 16 game. So while Crosby's been dealing with some stuff all year long, these are all guys who could have played. And if they were in a playoff race or if these games were meaningful, they absolutely would have, but they put them on IR so that they could ensure that they lost the toilet bowl against the Giants and put themselves in position to claim the number one pick. And this is a big deal for the Raiders because they need a quarterback. And the consensus number one pick in the draft is Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback out of Indiana. It certainly feels like they have done everything that they can to position themselves to draft Mendoza. I hate tanking, but at the same time, I don't blame them because we know you can't succeed in the NFL without a franchise level quarterback. If you're just bad, like mid-range bad, you're probably not positioning yourself to get one. Certainly not in this draft where there might only be one franchise guy in this draft. Mendoza might be the only legit franchise guy. So if you had a lottery, it would give you the best chance to get that number one pick, but it would probably hold you a little more accountable because there's not the guarantee.
This is so unique because the NFL is unlike any other sport when it comes to the draft. You talk about baseball, you talk about basketball. Basketball is close. Hockey is another one. You talk about baseball and hockey, you draft a player, you're not going to see that player at the pro level unless there's some super freak superstar for at least a couple years. They're going to have to get acclimated to the pro game. They're going to work their way up through the ranks. NBA, you see some players come in and play right away. Obviously, that we've seen that in recent history. But the NFL, like you expect a first round pick, especially first overall pick, to come in and play immediately. And so that puts an onus on keeping these games on the up and up. Now, the NFL, I agree with you. They should investigate this situation and say, these players had no designation. Why are they being put on IR? And then if the Vegas Raiders say, well, Brock Bowers has been dealing with a knee injury all season, sure. Why wasn't he on the injury report then? And if they come down hard on Vegas, it could go a long way to preventing this from happening. I don't know if they will, because I think the NFL doesn't want to bring light to anything that could be negative for the way that the sport is run, but it is something to consider. Coach, I don't know if have you ever seen the show Ted Lasso that obviously is on Apple TV?
I would. I mean, a million people have told me, but I don't have Apple TV.
So are you familiar with relegation?
Oh yeah. In the Premier League or in the soccer thing, relegation's awesome. I love the idea of that.
So, so in the show, which is one of my favorite shows now, the team gets relegated. What do you think what would it look like in the NFL to you if there was relegation? If there was a US,
where would you relegate them? Maybe you could relegate them to Canada. You got to go play in Canada next year.
I wish there was something like that because that's how you keep them on the up and up. You got to make them. You got to stay above a certain line, or else you're out of the league. That would be great. I don't know. Any final thoughts on this?
Well, this is going to be a nice segue into our next topic. The other issue with the lottery is, I mean, there are so many NFL conspiracy people to begin with. You know, you still have people talking about the NBA draft lottery of 1985 and how it was rigged so that the Knicks, who were awful at the time, but were obviously the biggest market in the sport, could get Patrick Ewing, the number one overall pick out of Georgetown, so that they could get good again. Oh my God, the conspiracy people would go nuts if like the Dallas Cowboys with like 15-1 odds ended up with the number one overall pick, and suddenly the conspiracy people would go out of their minds. So I don't know if the NFL wants to bring that upon themselves.
Well, that happened in the NBA lottery last year when the Mavericks they had such a long shot to get the number one overall pick, and they get Cooper Flagg out of Duke or something like that. I mean,
the conspiracy was if you trade Luka Doncic to the Lakers to make them a marquee franchise again, we'll reward you with the number one pick in the lottery.
Exactly. So let's talk about some conspiracy theories, and I might be amongst them in certain categories, but not all of them. But I want to get your take on this. There's a lot of people out there that looked at, and I was one of them, Going into week 17, I looked ahead to just the matchups in week 18. And I looked at things like, well, if Carolina does this, and if Pittsburgh does this, or if Baltimore does this, and San Francisco, Seattle, there was a chance that there would have been maybe one truly meaningful game in week 18. And the NFL has to be sitting there thinking, this can't happen. We can't have all these divisional games in week 18 that mean nothing. Nothing for seeding, nothing for divisions. It can't happen. And so the conspiracy theories out there say they made sure that they had meaningful games in week 18. So Ravens get the job done in Lambeau Field. The Steelers choke away an opportunity in Cleveland. Now, all of a sudden, we have a must-see game on Sunday Night Football. What's your take on that, Coach?
Garbage. It's garbage, Jeff. It's garbage. How did they do it? How did they do it? With a ticky-tack pass interference call here or there? I mean, why the Steelers lost to the Ravens? Because they didn't have a freaking plan for second, third, and fourth and goal from the 7. They threw the ball 3 times to the most little used wide receiver on the roster. Did the NFL call down and be like, throw the ball to Valdez-Scantling? Because no. I'll tell you the number one reason I'm not a conspiracy person. Because people suck at keeping secrets. People are the worst at keeping. Do you know the number of people you have to keep quiet to pull off a conspiracy theory of that nature? It just, to me, it has to be far too orchestrated. We are not good at keeping small secrets. How are we going to keep big secrets like that?
Well, so what is the smallest population to control to keep that secret in-house? You're talking organizations, and then you have that third little party. What is that little party? The officials. It's the officials, Coach. That's how you do it. If you have a potential pass interference on a 4th and goal in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, that they could have thrown the flag on Denzel Ward, which would have given him a 1st and goal from the 1. And they said, nah, I'm just going to keep that in my pocket. I'm not saying that I believe it, but I'm saying if they were going to do it, that's how you do it. You corrupt the officiating.
You could, but the officials didn't allow the Ravens to run for 300 and whatever yards.
Oh, no.
They didn't allow the Green Bay to get the ball rammed down their throat. Could there be some smoke there? Probably. But the bigger issue, and you and I have talked about this, is not that the league is orchestrating the officials to do this or that. It's that the officials don't know what the hell they're doing because they've changed the rules so many times. Nobody knows what pass interference is. I put something up on X where they called an OPI, or no, they called a defensive pass interference on, I can't even remember who it was. But in the frame, you had 2 wide receivers running routes simultaneously. And in both instances, there was the exact same contact. One was flagged for PI, one was not. Nobody knows. They don't know. What's roughing the passer? I have no idea. You don't know what it is. No. The officials don't know what it is. So they throw the flag and it gets the conspiracy people going. But the bigger problem is the gray area.
Yeah. Well, it's the eye in the sky, which they utilize, is good and bad. Because let's talk about Steelers, Cleveland. Cam Hayward hits Shedeur Sanders around the goal line as he's throwing the ball, and he's trying his best to get off him, and he can't. He kind of goes on top of him, and they throw the flag. And so you're wondering, is someone in the official's ear saying you need to throw that flag? Or are they saying there's just so many questions, and it's never going to be right. People just like to have different takes, but that's a conspiracy theory, Coach. I'm going to take my tinfoil hat off now.
All right.
I love that. I love that tinfoil hat. All right, Coach, let's talk about the Colts for a second here. The Colts fall from grace. They were at one point the number 1 team in the NFL. They were at one point looking like a juggernaut. And then everything fell apart. And let's also not forget what they did at the trade deadline. They traded a 1st-round draft pick for Sauce Gardner. They're making moves. It ends up with Phillip Rivers coming out of retirement at 44 years old after Daniel Jones ruptures his Achilles tendon, and they are out of the playoffs. What do you make of the Colts this season? What do you make of the Colts organization moving forward? What do you make of the Colts in general?
It was a good story for half of the season, but I think 2 things. One, Daniel Jones started to regress. I think defensive coordinators began to figure out what they were doing with him. They began to do a better job of keeping him in the pocket. Don't let him get out of the pocket where he's a very athletic quarterback, and he can make stuff happen. And once you confine him to being a pocket passer, there was some regression there. And then obviously the injury, they didn't have anybody that could step in and win football games for them. Defenses ganged up on Jonathan Taylor. You saw Jonathan Taylor's numbers were through the roof when Daniel Jones was playing well, and then were obviously not so when they had to get to the backups. And then the Rivers move was fascinating. I mean, it was the most desperate move I think I've ever seen, in recent memory, but it made for some good TV viewing. But he wasn't going to come out. This is not a Disney movie, man. He wasn't going to come out and save their season.
It definitely was tough, and it was tough to watch. You could see him just slowly but surely just slipping away. As an organization, I do have to think that, man, they kind of went all in at the deadline and made some big time moves. And you get Sauce Gardner, and I know he's going to be under contract, but you gave up a lot to get him. You got to have some buyer's remorse there, don't you? Don't you have to look back and say, gosh, darn it, we just wasted draft capital, and what did we get? So where do they go from here, Coach? What's your take on that?
I think the first thing they have to do is decide if Daniel Jones is the guy. I mean, was the regression that you saw from Daniel Jones just a little bit of a slump, or was it Daniel Jones reverting back to who he'd been for most of his career? That makes the injury really, really difficult for them, because they didn't get a clear picture on that question. Was this really who he's going to be? Because if the answer is yes, then you got to find another quarterback. And now they're kind of stuck. Yeah. Now they got to make a decision on where they don't have all the information. That's tough.
Everyone says, well, Daniel Jones should be ready for next year. It's an Achilles rupture that happened late in the season. That's not a guarantee. They're saying it's going to be cheaper. He's going to be cheaper than if he were healthy. Sure, maybe. But keep in mind the quality of quarterback in the NFL. It's not good. It is not good. We're going to talk about Malik Willis here in a player profile in a second. He's probably going to get paid this offseason based on how he performed as a backup. And so Daniel Jones could be saying, yeah, I know I'm coming off an injury, but you all had to go get Phillip Rivers off the couch at 44 years old to replace me.
Yep.
So I'm not going to be as discounted as you think. So that's interesting. But okay, let's do our player profile. Malik Willis, the guy that was coming out of, I believe it was Liberty, and that was the 2023 quarterback draft. That was when Kenny Pickett got drafted, or is that 2022? 2022, I believe. I don't know. Yeah. Can't remember. One of the worst draft classes of recent memory. He goes to Tennessee. He ends up getting traded to Green Bay. He's been seen in spotty starts here and there, and he plays well, Coach. It looks like this guy just needed some time. What do you think of Malik Willis?
I think Malik Willis made himself a lot of money, because again, it's a very thin quarterback crop in the draft. Mendoza might be the only slam dunk there. You got a lot of quarterback needy teams. I mean, just the AFC alone, you've got Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. Cleveland needs a quarterback, probably. The Colts need a quarterback. The Dolphins are probably moving on from Tua. Where are they going to get him? I mean, the free agent quarterback market is not robust.
No.
There is a shortage of quarterbacks and a plentiful market, and that always leads to a big payday. And when you look at what Malik Willis has done on the field, I did a film breakdown of him in Green Bay's game against Baltimore. He was sensational. He was 18 out of 21 for 288 yards. He rushed for 60 yards and 2 more touchdowns. He made every throw. Like, that was the thing that I think surprised me was, hey, you can system a guy into a couple of good performances. You shield him from his weaknesses until the defense figures him out, et cetera. But he made pocket throws. He made off-platform throws. He made throws into tight windows. He threw good deep balls. He obviously is a major threat with his legs. He did everything you'd want. I mean, there's not a guy who's more attractive at the position right now who's available than Malik Willis.
It's crazy. Like I said, quality of quarterback is on a steady decline around the league. And so these players who even show flashes are going to be getting paid handsomely. We'll see what he gets when the new league year starts in March. But, Coach, that's a wrap for this show. What do you got coming up on the Call Sheet podcast?
Yeah, so Wednesday we're going to do another one of our Gridiron Glossary episodes. That got a good reception when we did that a couple weeks ago, where we take a couple of common football terms or ones that maybe are popular in the game these days, and we break them down and explain them, and and then heading to Arizona for a little family get together. My niece is getting married out there, so I'll be back on Monday, and we'll have our Monday morning game balls for Week 18 then.
All right. Have a safe trip, Coach. Enjoy the new year, and we'll talk next week. Take it easy.